you, everybody. Thanks for coming out. It's great to be in Lake Havasu. I was in Flagstaff and Tuba City yesterday and flew in here in a little airplane, not like what I used to fly. It's very sad, actually. You know, I used to fly the fighter airplanes out to the aircraft carrier. I used to fly the space shuttle. Now I fly a little Cessna. But it gets me around the state rather quickly. I was in Tuba City. Little runway there. I do not recommend flying into Tuba City. Great to be on the Navajo Nation, but airports are not their thing. But hey, it's wonderful to see all of you here. We've got 12 days until an incredibly consequential election. You know, we thought this was a big deal in 2016. You know, when we were close to electing the first woman president. And I imagine everybody in this room, me included, felt pretty confident that Hillary Clinton was going to win that election. I started to lose a little confidence as we got a little closer, just from some folks I've been talking to as I traveled across the country. But, you know, that ship has sailed. That election did not go well for Democrats and for us and for the country, for that matter. You know, Donald Trump then spent 4 years doing a few things, I think, that sit at the top of my list when I think about his presidency. One is giant tax cut for billionaires. The other is taking away women's reproductive rights. Seems pretty proud about that. He says he broke Roe v. Wade. And the third thing is shredding our alliances. And I'll get to that a little bit more here in a second. But then we had a chance to, you know, right the ship. The ship was, to use some Navy terminology, the ship was going down fast. And we had an opportunity in 2020 to fix it. And I find it a rather hard to understand how we're back here again in 2024 with the possibility of putting Donald Trump back into the White House. This is a guy who is about as unfit to be president as anybody that I have ever known. How many veterans we have in here? Good number, maybe about 10 or so. And how many people, spouses of veterans, family members of veterans? Okay, that's a much bigger number. The amount of contempt that this guy has for us and for our family members is just unprecedented in our country's history. Forget about presidents for a second. Set aside presidents, members of Congress, elected leaders anywhere. I've never heard anybody say the kind of stuff that he has said about service members. When he was over in Europe for a Normandy, a D-Day memorial remembrance anniversary, he was supposed to go to this World War I cemetery. Now it was raining. And apparently he didn't want to get his hair wet. Now I don't have that problem. He later said that the helicopters couldn't fly in the rain. Has anybody ever flown in a helicopter in the rain? Helicopters fly in rain just fine. And then he said the Secret Service wouldn't take him there. The reality of the situation, reported by his chief of staff, General John Kelly, Marine Corps General Kelly, no relation to me. He said that he referred to those World War I dead service members who never even got to come home to the United States. They were buried in France. He referred to them as a bunch of losers because they died serving their country. Donald Trump doesn't understand service above self. You know, he thinks people in one category or the other. You're either the con man, which is him, or you're the person getting conned, which is all of us. And he conned us once in 2016. He's trying to do it all over again. On that same trip, any Marines here? There's one. Yeah, we got Marines. Quasi Smith is a Marine. On that same trip, Donald Trump referred to 1,800 dead Marines who died at Belleau Wood as a bunch of suckers because they got killed serving their country. I've never heard another American anywhere say things like this. When he was visiting Arlington National Cemetery with General John Kelly, whose son, by the way, I think he died in Iraq. His son is buried at Arlington. He said, well, I don't understand what did they get out of this. You know, he doesn't understand that there is things more important than ourselves.
Sure.
National security, the future of this country, you know, where we stand in, you know, the big picture with our allies, having friends around the world. It's not just all about us as individuals. For Donald Trump, he seems to make decisions all based on one thing, and that's how it helps him. So we are, again, at this crossroads about whether or not we're going to put this man who's totally unfit for office. I was asked the other day, I was up at Northern Arizona University, NAU, and I was asked I had a bunch of students, a bunch of young people outside. There were probably maybe a couple hundred people there. And I spoke to them, and then I was taking some pictures, and there were two students with MAGA hats on. And one of them wanted to get a picture with me. Not unusual, actually. I have a picture with a Trump supporter here in 2020 when I did a rally, and there were a couple hundred people in the room, and in the back there was a woman with a Trump hat and a Trump shirt, and then she got in the photo line. And then my chief of staff wanted to get me out of the photo line so I don't interact. I was like, oh, maybe she wants a photo. She just wanted the photo. And said she was voting for me, but she also, I think, voted for Donald Trump. But this young person at NAU, you know, asked me, he said he could still be convinced to change his mind. There were a couple things he cared about. He said the Second Amendment, the economy, and border security. So I talked to him about all those three issues, and I said, but set that stuff aside for a second. I said, if you're really undecided, why don't you listen to the people that know this guy the best? The people that served with him in his cabinet. Half of his cabinet, including his vice president, have refused to endorse him. Republicans, a lot of them, prominent ones here in Arizona, including Senator Jeff Flake, John McCain's son, Jim McCain, Mayor John Giles, they have endorsed Kamala Harris. Not because they're huge fans of the vice president. I mean, I think they've come to appreciate her and her experience, but really they understand that Donald Trump is unfit to serve as commander-in-chief. So we have 12 days. This is going to be a close election. In battleground states, it is going to be close. You look at all the polling averages, some of them have Kamala Harris up by 1% or less than 1%. Some have Donald Trump up by 1 or 2. It's all going to be within the margin of error. And at this point in an election, what matters is getting out our vote. We're not going to change a lot of people's minds. Maybe I changed that kid's mind. I think I may have. But what really matters is getting folks to turn in their ballots to the polling places, coming up with a plan on how to vote. And folks, this is not rocket science. If it was, I could help. This is all about which campaign works harder at this point. And the knocking on door part of this and the making phone call piece of it adds up to about 1%. Just 1%. Now that doesn't sound like a lot. It is everything. It is the difference between winning and losing at this point in an election. This election in Arizona for president is going to come down to less than 1%. I can almost guarantee you that. Remember what happened in 2022, statewide election? Our Attorney General, Chris Mays, won by 280 votes. We could be seeing the same thing again. And that election, by the way, was won because we had this big operation of curing ballots. You know what that is? Curing ballots are when you have ballots that maybe the signature wasn't confirmed, doesn't look right, so then you have to go back to the voter and you have to bring them the ballot and say, hey, was this your signature? Call in. Tell them that was your ballot. You have to do stuff like that to get the ballots counted. We did a big operation, thousands and thousands of ballots we cured. She won by 280 votes. We could be looking at doing the same thing again. And Arizona could be the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the White House. It absolutely can. So we have a lot on the line here in our state. We truly do. And I don't know what's gonna happen to our democracy with 4 more years of Donald Trump. I mean, his chief of staff the other day publicly, there's now audio of it, referred to Donald Trump as a fascist. General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, same thing. I mean, these are Marine and Army generals, 2 generals, that realize the risk if we were to put a guy with these authoritarian tendencies who looks up to people like Putin and Orban and other basically dictators. I mean, he has some kind of fascination with dictators. He's even said, he said he would only do it for 1 day. I don't know what that means exactly, but he wants to be a dictator for 1 day. Talks about us collectively as the enemy within. So, what do we got to do? We got to work harder. We've got to knock on more doors, make more phone calls. There are a lot of Democrats here in Mojave County. You just got to look hard for them. And you got to get them to vote. Some people will sit on their ballots, they'll turn them in late, and then if something happens, they don't turn them in at all. I mean, I've experienced this before I met Gabby, by the way. Gabby was like, you got to vote early. She'd kind of get on my case about it. This was when I was living in Texas. But before that, I remember there was like, you're driving down the road, you go to the wrong polling place, you say, I made my attempt. I did that once, long time ago. But now I realize that these elections can come down to a single vote. It has in Virginia, the Virginia House of Delegates. There was also a race for a House legislative seat here in Arizona where it came out tied. And get this, the guy running was a Democrat, his wife was a Republican, and she did not vote for him. And then he lost the coin toss. So I was at an event with her recently where she was talking about how everybody's vote counts, including hers. I don't know how you can't vote for your husband. You're not going to vote for him, but you're going to be married to him? I don't quite get that. But we have a lot of other important races. Kwesi Smith is on the ballot here. We got to turn out the vote for him. Ruben Gallego. Ruben, I really need Ruben in the Senate with me. You know how, forget about how bad it is for the country. You know what a pain in the ass that's going to be for me if Carrie Lake is the that ain't going to be fun. So let's make sure Ruben gets elected. He's a Marine, combat veteran, a guy I work with on a lot of issues, especially affecting veterans. I'm on the Armed Services Committee in the Senate. He's on the Armed Services Committee in the House. We've got a great partnership on things, and he's going to be a great senator, but he's got to get across the finish line too. And then all those ballot initiatives, including 139 to restore women's reproductive rights, here in the state. You got to go. I don't know what it is in here in Mojave County, but in Pima County, our ballot's 4 pages long, and that's like the last thing on it. So remind people, if you're out there volunteering, remind people to fill out the whole ballot, especially get to Prop 139. Because Donald Trump, this will temporarily restore these rights here in the state of Arizona, but if Donald Trump is president and he does what he says he was going to do, that can all be taken away again with federal legislation, if he's able to do it. And I think he will try, ultimately, because there'll be a lot of pressure on him to do that. What else? What else I need to tell you guys? So I spent 25 years in the Navy. We do not need a Navy. We need an Army. We need an Army to win this election. We need more than the 120,000 volunteers we already have. We have 120,000. How many people in here have volunteered and knocked on doors? Okay, so there's room for improvement in this group. We can get more people knocking on doors, making more phone calls. We're going to win this election here. Kamala Harris can win Arizona. We just got to work harder. We got to work harder than the other side. So folks, let's do this. Let's get this done. We only got 12 days to go. I've had 1 day off in the last 9 weeks. Been traveling around the battleground states. I was in North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan. The other day, 2 days ago, I was in Sierra Vista and Yuma, Tuba City, Flagstaff here. I'm going to go to Casa Grande tomorrow, the Gila River Indian community. The day after that, back to the Navajo Nation. The day after that to Prescott. And then next week, I don't know, somewhere. But let me take a couple questions. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you for coming. And
Thank you for voting.
sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And I want to say, go Army!
Go Army. Yes, we need the Army. My dad was in the Army.
Could you address the harshness of our local utility company, Unisource, gouging us here and this? There are
This is the electric utility?
Yes.
Yes.
You guys don't have you don't use APS or SRP?
No.
Is that a California utility?
No.
I cannot. I mean, I'll get some information. We'll take a look at it.
Yes.
It's just something I'm not familiar with. You say the rates have gone up?
They've gone up every year, 100%.
But the Corporation Commission controls the utility
They
rates.
did, and they approved
They approved their increase? You say it's gone up 400%?
Yes.
Did they give a reason? 400% in what period of time?
just infrastructure.
1 year.
In 1 year?
In 1 year.
So somebody who had a $200 bill is now getting an $800 bill?
$677. I paid $119 before. I'm paying $677.
Yes.
Wow.
For no good reason.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get your information and I'll get back to you on it. I'll have my folks take a look at it. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a statement. Thank you for Gabby and you for your collective.
Thank you. She would be here, but she was in Pennsylvania 2 days ago and she's in North Carolina today. And she'll be back, I think, tomorrow, and she'll be with me, I think, up in Prescott, and I don't know where else. And the last week, you know, we'll see. I'll probably be all over the place again, flying little airplane around. Yes, sir.
My name is John Hall. I've been here since 2006. My wife is from Canada. She came down in 2018, 8 different times until 2020, when they stopped flying across the border.
Yep.
So she was stuck here. So I called an immigration attorney, and they told me, marry her. What the hell you mean, marry her? I've been for 17 years. She said, Mr. Hall, you want to stay here? Marry her. So against my will, I married her, okay? But in 2021, in June, we got married. In November of 2021, they gave her a Social Security card, a work permit, a business application, everything except for a green card. A few months after that, she had a full-blown heart attack. No insurance. And there's a for-profit hospital here. That's $300,000 just for the hospital alone. I don't mind that. I called the Federal Exchange. I got her insurance in April, but she had the heart attack in March. So we're looking at some crazy thing. Now all we have to do now, I'm already a disabled Marine.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get on my insurance, but I got to get up to 100%. In order to do that, I was in North Carolina drinking that poison water for 17 months.
Yeah.
That's on the deal called the PAC Act, which
Yeah.
closed out on August the 10th. But now we're sitting here waiting until the beginning of 2025 before we do anything.
So your disability rating needs to be 100% for her to be on TRICARE.
Exactly.
All right. Have you been denied?
Several times.
Oh, you have?
I've had prostate cancer.
Yeah.
I got neuropathy in my ankles. I got lymphedema in my leg. I've had blood clot in both of my lungs. I'm lucky to still be here at 81.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me put you in touch with. There's a woman that handles constituent services for military veterans in my office.
Beautiful.
She's a veteran. You can talk to her about it. Maybe there's something that we're missing here.
Okay, because I sent
Right.
you 2 letters already, and whoever your subordinates are.
Yeah.
Then
I'll take your
they
information.
Yeah. We'll connect her to Arlette in our office.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is kind of lighthearted, but after you failed the test for the Army,
Amen.
How? Can you speak up?
After you failed the test to get the Army, how come you picked the Navy?
How come I picked the Navy? Well, I wanted to, fly the fighter jets off of an aircraft carrier, and the Army doesn't have any aircraft carriers. My grandfather was in the Navy. My dad was in the Army, but I also wanted to ultimately fly the space shuttle. And to fly the space shuttle, it's easier to be coming from being a Navy or Air Force or Marine Corps test pilot. Is if you're going to be the commander of the space shuttle like I was, you got to have that background. So, Army was out. But we like the Army in the Navy when we're in the Navy. It's the Air Force we have a problem with. I'm just kidding. I'm now the chair of the Airland Subcommittee. So in Armed Services, I'm the guy in charge of all the Air Force and Army programs. So I'm always looking out for the Air Force and the Army, especially here in Arizona where we have tremendous Army and Air Force installations. And some Marines.
All right.
Yeah, man.
I'm a retired teacher from California, but I've noticed, especially here in Havasu, there's a real lack of support and education for the teachers and paying the teachers. How can we, or what can be done to help raise, teacher salaries and also firefighters, policemen? I just noticed in this town there's a real lack of funding.
Well, on the teacher front, the biggest thing we could do to improve education here in the state of Arizona, and by the way, on per pupil spending, out of 50 states, you know where we are?
49.
No, we're 52.
Oh.
Even though there's only 50 states. We come like after, because they had DC in there, and I think they had Puerto Rico. We're like below 50. So, we're the worst. We do not pay teachers. Public education is not valued in the state of Arizona. Public education in any state is largely a responsibility of the state government. Katie Hobbs, our governor, is very much so pro-public education. But under Doug Ducey with the Republican legislature, they dramatically cut funding for public schools and they started the voucher program. Now those vouchers, that money comes from public education to send, even if you homeschool your kid. So this has not been good for some kids because people are deciding, well, I'll just take the check and keep my kid out of school and maybe not give them a good education. I think that occurs a lot. And so the best way to fix this is we have to get Democrats in control of the State House and the State Senate. And then the governor will have the tools to fix it. And it's only winning 1 or 2 seats. So those elections, those down ballot races are critically important for education in our state. All right. Yeah.
I am one of those down ballot candidates and I'm a public school board member currently. So education has always been, but one of the things that we could use help with is PILT funding.
Yeah.
Because the PILT funding that should also be helping schools and fire districts and those is going to the counties, and the counties are not sharing that money.
Okay.
So anything that you could do to help facilitate that process, BLM is the one piece of federal land that we don't see any tax benefit for. If it was Forest Service, we would get funding. If it was military bases, we would get funding. But because it's BLM, it all goes to the counties, and they get to decide what to do with it, and it does not get shared with your other non-taxable.
Why is it different for BLM as compared to DOD?
Well, that's a good question for you, Senator Kelly.
I will check.
I've done my research, and I can't figure out why it's different, but it is. It's the one piece of federal land that's different.
Okay. What that refers to is that you have people that live on like military bases and they have kids and they use the public school system, but they're not paying taxes that fund property taxes that fund the public school systems. So this funding is to make up for that. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you being out here. Let's work really, really hard and let's get this done.